Hello, huddlers. I'm excited to introduce you to Professor Byron Sharp. He's a globally recognized marketing scientist and professor. We'll get to that scientist part in a minute. And the director of the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute for Marketing Science at the University of South Australia. And Ehrenberg-Bass is going to come up a lot in our conversation. He is renowned for pioneering evidence-based marketing principles that challenge the conventional wisdom and drive brand growth across industries worldwide. G'day, Professor Sharp.
G'day.
It's wonderful to have you here. It's a real honor. And you're in Adelaide, right?
Yes, Adelaide, Australia.
Okay, so what time is it there? Just so we get that straight.
Morning, 8:30. The sun is
Oh
up.
my gosh. So see, you're just starting your day, bright, bushy tails, and we're ending it here in New York City at about 7 p.m. So are you ready to dive into all things B2B?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So it's been 15 years since the first edition of How Brands Grow, and about 13 since you did the companion book, How B2B Brands Grow, came out. And of course, a lot's changed since then, including the rise of MarTech and, of course, AI everything. And I'm really curious what you've been focused on lately, especially with respect to B2B marketing.
We're about to do some work on physical availability for B2B. Um, so stay tuned for that.
Okay.
Uh,
But
and
would you define what physical availability means? What's that concept?
yeah. I mean, back in the day, it seemed pretty straightforward. Physical availability was, people physically being able to buy something. But it confuses a few people because they're like, "But I'm buying it on my phone." We're like,
Right.
"Okay, but you're still physically buying it, okay?" So, it's yeah. Actually, a better way to think of it is, from a marketer's perspective, is that physical availability is catching people who are about to buy. Right? Always a In B2B, it's usually a very small percentage of your customer base are in the market today or this week or this month. And your physical availability, if you're a 10% share brand, which would be great, right? Pretty big brand, you want to catch 10% of those people who are, in the market today. Actually, you want to catch a bit more than your fair share. Yeah. But that's what your physical availability is about, making it easy for them to buy. And so it's all sorts of things like just, accepting their payment terms, providing credit in B2B can be, part of the thing that allows them, makes it easy for them to buy. Um, Whereas mental availability is the stuff that we do for largely all the people who aren't in the market today, but we know they will be sometime in the future. And when they do happen to do that, because we can't predict when that's going to happen, we'd like them to notice and think of us.
So physical availability, and in the Ehrenberg-Bass, the most quoted statistic that I know of, and the folks at LinkedIn has
Yeah.
talked about it a lot. To the point, it's gospel. 5% of your targets in the market at any given time, 95% isn't. And if you only target the 5%, you are missing a large part of your market.
Mm.
I wonder the source of that data, and I've now
Oh,
gotten to the point. It's
okay.
it's so quoted
It's
so often.
yeah, and it is it's largely true, but I'm not going to quibble whether it's 95.5 or 96.4 or 97.3 or but what Professor John Dawes, who coined that, was trying to just illustrate is a thing we as a statistical distribution, which is the negative binomial distribution, which is terribly geek and most people don't understand. So 95, whereas 95.5, wow, everyone got that.
Right. Right. It's an easy concept to grasp, whether it's
Yeah. The,
not,
the,
whether
the
it's,
key thing is the vast majority of your customers are not going to buy this week. It doesn't matter what you do, they are not going to buy. They're not in the market. Uh, and you've got this vast amount. Hopefully, I mean, if you're going to be around in 10 years' time, you've got this huge portion of businesses that could buy from you. Yeah. And if you want to get bigger, well, absolutely. And so John's point is you can't neglect the 95 and just go, I'm only going to concentrate on the people who are in the market at the moment. That is there are marketers who find themselves in that position, and it's a terrible position to be in. Some durables get this, like people just don't think of things like vacuum cleaners until they're in the market. And the great problem with that is, unless you're Dyson, because Dyson do get attention when people aren't in the market. If you aren't, if you're some other brand, the chance that when they are in the market, it's been that very brief time to actually go buy a vacuum cleaner, that they even notice you is very, very low. And you're absolutely also at the mercy of the retail network. So you may have paid a lot of money and spent a lot of sales force to get into the retail network, which is terribly important, right? That's your physical availability. But you are totally at their mercy of whether they bother to, this salesperson bothers to recommend you on the floor. Uh, Whereas other brands, yeah, like Dyson is, yeah, really stands out because it actually gets attention, actually gets into people's heads when they're not in the market for a vacuum cleaner. Yeah.
Right, because they just have a long history of innovation, and their products look different. They sound, everything about it. Even the Dyson blades that cool dry your hands in the restrooms are
Yeah.
different than
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But we're going back to B2B. What's so difficult for a lot of CMOs is they're uh, told, we need revenue this quarter.
Yeah. Sure.
We want to spend money on what will create so-called demand, right? So you put all your budget in this thing called demand generation.
Yeah,
And
which is just physical availability. It doesn't actually generate much demand. Well,
right,
I mean, it does in the sense that if you open your store for more hours, you'll get more sales. But usually, there is an optimum point where, most stores don't open 24 hours a day. And you go, why not? I go, well, because, for like 8 hours of the day, it costs a lot and we don't get many sales. And you should have optimized your physical availability because you can do experiments, you can turn bits off, turn bits on. You can buy a search word, not buy the search word, and see whether it works. And you should optimize that. And so there should be no, if someone comes to you and goes, well, we want extra, you'd be like, well, we've optimized it. It's not really, this is profit maximizing. There's not really much more we can do. And then you should be spending on your mental availability. If you only spend on catching people when they fall, as I said, it's a terrible position to be in. Over time, you find you're having to spend more just to stay where you are.
well, and there was a period of time when you could make SEO and SEM, and you could buy the keywords and you could do it efficiently in B2B to the point that you could get these folks that were physically available, that were in the market. Right now, that's getting harder and harder.
Yeah, it was a brief period when you're compared to, not many people were playing in the space, but it's a bit, it is like physical availability. It's a bit like you're the only person in the store and you're like, whoa, this is fantastic. Yay. And then other people arrive. Yeah.
So help me with this, and I want to come back to this. And this may make you laugh. I mean, after all, your book is How Brands Grow, but we
Hmm.
have a lot of CMOs, not just a few, a lot of CMOs in our community whose CEOs or investors have told them, do not use the word brand. Do not put budget that says brand to it. And for these CEOs and many investors, brand spending is like fluff. And they want their dollars. Again, I'm going to use the term demand to generate uh, pipeline, if you will, things where people are raising their hand and saying, yes, I want to buy your product. I'm interested. I have a budget and so forth. Do those things and only do those things in the classic Wanamaker sort of just spend the money. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious if you could get these CEOs and investors in a room, or we could just get the CMOs here. How do,
Hmm.
how do we help them with this? And this is really true in PE land for a lot of companies.
Okay. Well, actually, I find private equity tend to understand things a bit better. But anyway, no. First of all, I have some sympathy for because for the distaste for brand expenditure because in the B2B world particularly, you see, I mean. you see some terrible stuff, right? I mean, it's just so uncommercial. It's like no, this is brand. It's not meant to drive sales. So that gives us a free ticket to just do anything. And it's not very brand because usually it's not very branded, right? It's usually some fluffy generic campaign. Um, the classic is a bank, doing these, heartfelt, emotional sort of, things that say things like, it's not about the money. Which,
Sorry.
I find it's just bizarre, right? Because
Yeah.
it is about the money, right? If you're a small business owner and you go, well, actually, I come to a bank, it's about money, right?
Yeah. Pretty
Uh,
much. Yeah.
and so, you get a lot of rubbish spend there, but it's very badly branded, actually. It's brand advertising, it's very branded. So, actually, when banks ask me, how much should I spend on product advertising versus brand advertising? I say, it should all be product advertising because no one cares about banks. If I'm running a business, I care about my business. A bank is like a necessary evil that I have to have. I do not care about banking, but I do buy products from the bank, right? So I do buy, systems and FPOS and things. And you got to tell me about that stuff yourself. That said, every product ad should build the brand. Right? Because it should be unmistakably you, and that's what branding is. It's about being unmistakably you. Forget about this. There's a lot of stuff probably still taught in American universities that branding is some sort of mysterious thing that makes people sort of fall in love with them. No, it's not. It's just looking like you, so people know. You know, they can't be loyal to you unless they know. What brand do I actually buy? So look, I have some sympathy for that fluffy, awful stuff. But if you think about it, there's physical availability, catching people when they fall, and then there's mental availability, which is all the people that, aren't buying our brand at the moment, who aren't in the category at the moment. We need both. And it's very easy to explain to a CFO. You point to every single, outside of maybe mining, valuable company in the world, and they are built on they're valuable because they've got a lot of mental availability, a lot of physical availability. They might also have some patents and things like that, but that stuff doesn't actually last. They have mental availability and the physical availability. And if you spend money on broad reach communication, publicity, advertising, whatever, and it reaches the brains of buyers, even if they're not in the market yet, that's valuable. So you don't see an instantaneous, you don't see a sales response. They're not in the market at the moment, right?
Well, that's the part. So,
Yeah. But you can see it. You can see, you can see an impact on your share price, your stock price. Yes.
so I mean, I think that there's a notion that you could just spend money on people who are in the market.
Yeah. But the problem is everyone else does too. And if some of them have like the Dyson example, right? So you go into a store for a vacuum cleaner and you see the Dyson say that it fires off stuff in your head immediately. You know what they are. Is a lovely old ad, a print B2B ad. It was McGraw-Hill or something. It's got
Yeah.
this grumpy, the grumpy
Right.
looking
Yes,
guy
I
in the
do.
chair.
Where
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you've been. I don't know, lots and lots and lots. I don't know that. Yeah. Why
Yeah.
should I talk to you?
No, no, yeah. But I think it's like, yes, but come in and take an hour of my valuable time.
Yeah,
Like, no,
exactly.
it's not going to happen.
Right.
I used to work for Dun& and Bradstreet in sales, right? And you ring up business people and you say, you're from Dun& and Bradstreet. Most of the time they've heard of you, right? So
Right.
that's a huge advantage. If they haven't heard of you, your chance of getting an appointment is very low.
So awareness is another one of those terms because awareness is the getting past the 5% who are in the market to some percentage of those others. And obviously you are talking about more than just awareness. I,
Well, yeah, we use the term mental availability because awareness has been hijacked by these market research measures, of
right.
saying, so, have you heard of a CR, have you heard of these CRM systems, and you tick which one, but that doesn't mean that you will think of those at the right time. That's just mere, it's like and it leads to the problem that companies say, oh yeah, we've got awareness. It's like,
Right. Because they're
it's
just
not
equating that. So how
it's
do
not a
you
one-off
measure it?
battle. You have to do this every single day. Yeah.
So how do you measure? So if we're talking about mental and physical availability, and we're trying to grow our mental availability, um, what kinds of when you're consulting with companies and so forth, what are you advising them to track?
Okay, this is covered in I'm not sure if it's in How Brands Grow Part Two or whether it's in it's certainly in one of Jenny Romanick's books, probably the Managing Distinctive Brand Assets, but it talks about you have to use multiple questions. I mean, it's not expensive. You just have to do a survey. You have to survey people who are not in the market. Probably the biggest thing is you have to survey people who are, light buyers of your category, who aren't going to buy for quite a long time. Yeah, because they make up most. Yeah. So the killer is when people do, I just want to, let's do a focus group of just our most heavy regular buyers or people who bought in the last quarter. Then you're missing out on most of the market. So mental availability is understanding all the different cues that might fire in a buyer's head that might lead them to your product category. And for most B2B, you're selling something that's usually fairly complicated. It can do lots of different things for different companies, and they might have they're thinking about a different thing. It's not just one thing. And they're not usually thinking, I need a CRM system. They're thinking of some business problem. And you've got to understand all these uh, to understand what makes your brand potentially mentally available, that you link to those things.
Okay, so we're talking to folks that are not in the market as opposed to people who just bought, which is a very common thing.
Yeah.
And is there anything is specifically that we want to know from them that will help us sort of say, oh, we're making some headway on the other 95%?
Yeah, I mean, well, you want to understand their lives, their business, and yeah, the problem is, a lot of we are naturally sort of quite, production led, and we think of, this thing has this amazing one feature and it's for that. No, you got to understand the complexity of other people's businesses and why they might think of you, and then you communicate that, get that into their heads that you are a solution or for that sort of thing, and then you get more chance of being able to have a buying conversation with them when they come into the market, or you start to stimulate that sort of thinking. I saw a good presentation from I think it was DocuSign, and they're like, most businesses, if you ask them, say, oh yeah, we would like to move contracts to completely online, yeah, systems. Yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah. But they've got other things to do. So you have to work out what are the little triggers that might suddenly make them go, oh, but yeah, maybe we should, we've been planning to do that. It's on the agenda in the next decade, but maybe we should do it now. And it could be a legal risk thing, it could be an ease thing, it could be it could be a whole lot of things. And so you need to understand these cues that fire in people's heads and they suddenly say, John, I think you should go and investigate, moving the contracts to being digital. Uh,
Yeah, it's funny because they have an advantage as a sort of product-led growth because suddenly DocuSign shows up in your thing, somebody is using it, and
yeah.
next thing you know, and so they
That
have
help that helps massively with getting some
massively.
awareness.
So
Yeah,
because you suddenly are aware of it, and as a result, they are one of those brands that are as close to FedEx as that, they kind of own the category
yeah.
because
But
they
but 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 still, businesses find a million reasons, to put it off.
yes, they do.
Yeah,
Uh,
because I mean, this is a particular thing in B2B. You're selling to people who are running. Well, I suppose it's like consumers. They've got lives, right? They've got their businesses, and you'd love to go and tell them about the advantages of digital contracts. But they get their contract signed at the moment. It sort of works. So yeah, you have to understand how can we come up, fire in their brains? How can we get some attention? Uh, and how can we fit easily into their lives? If they say, okay, let's have a look at that. How do you make it, and this is the physical availability, how do you make it really easy for them to buy?
And
And
well,
in
with that,
B2B, that's often not easy, right?
no,
Yeah.
I mean it again. If you are in the a DocuSign, they have that advantage of where a single user can start to do it, and the next thing you know, it takes over the company. And so
Yeah,
it's easy because you can buy it on an individual thing. When you're selling to an enterprise and you've got $1 million contract, it's a much different
absolutely.
and it's hard uh, for these folks to find, particularly if you have a buying committee of 14 people
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
different sort of considerations of what buying easily means.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So
often in B2B, we know like you end up buying not from, it may not be the best provider. You're probably pretty sure it's not the best provider, but you're like, yeah, but this provider has gone through our procurement system and is on our list and I'm allowed to buy from them. And that is a lovely example of physical availability, right? Once you've gone through that pain and got onto someone's, preferred buying list, that is an asset. That is worth money.
yes, and it is why in at least here, the companies that unless they're really like an AI company that are surviving in the last year and a half is because they have a huge installed base and they're able to continue to sell different products and services to that install base.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually
This is
getting a net new customer right now in B2B in the US, it's pretty darn challenging.
Yeah, it's always hard for B2B. I mean, there is a different a key. There's a lot of similarities actually B2B B2C. It's still marketing, but in in um in B2C, people moan about the fragmentation of media. You know, that there isn't just a simple. I pop it on TV and I reach everyone.
Right.
Uh, but I'm like B2B, it's always been like that. Uh, it's possibly got a bit better in that we now have LinkedIn, which is it's like an online, I don't know, Financial Times and Wall Street Journal or something.
Right.
But it's still, yeah, there's not much else, right? Trade shows, oh God, they're expensive. Sending sales reps individually, oh my God, that's expensive. We don't have any cheap broad reach media. And even the ones we do, like LinkedIn, it they top up. Most media has this problem. You get a bit of reach immediately, and then it's very hard to get more because there are some people who are on LinkedIn every single day. You can reach them quite easily.
Right.
And there are some other business people who are on LinkedIn once every couple of years when they update something on their CV. Wow, they're really hard. You can
Yeah.
advertise $1 million a day on LinkedIn. You're still not going to reach those people. You're going to have to wait. And so, yeah, this is a tough thing that B2B marketers they don't have these broad reach things. So you can't do anything. You can't build mental availability quickly. So yeah, time is your friend. Not
Right.
don't
And so,
don't think you can spend lots of money. Just doubling the budget will double the reach. It will
right.
not.
That won't necessarily solve the problem either. So more money isn't necessarily the trick, but I'm sort of
The trick is the trick, and there is a trick. It's take your budget and spread it out over time.
everyday low price kind of, we're just going to keep it is sort of 52 days a week. This is 52 weeks a year, the sort of old
What
P&G strategy.
Yeah, whatever your budget will can tolerate, but don't blow it all in January
Right.
because you'll be buying. Well, you won't get much reach, and if you'd
Right.
spent half the amount, you probably would have still got the same amount. And if you'd spent half of that, you probably would have still got the same amount. So the answer is, oh, I should take my money and spend in February as well, and March as well. Yeah,
So we're emphasizing reach over frequency in
Oh,
this.
that's true. That's always true in all media. But in B2B, you just have to acknowledge that you do not have it's a slow burn, right? Everything is a slow burn. There's no Super Bowl for B2B.
So,
Well,
one
unless
of
you buy the Super Bowl, but you're going to reach a lot of people. And you do see this, right? You do see this in
right.
B2B in it's maybe in management consulting. Maybe their margins are so fat that they can afford to do airport advertising and things, where 99% of the people who walk past the billboard are not in their market, and they can still justify that. But
Yeah, I think, I mean,
most of us can't.
What they can, and part of it is because there's a recruiting thing. There's a value to that because they hire. So if you're Deloitte, you're hiring
Right.
75,000 people a year. I mean, the ridiculous numbers like that. So
Yes.
there's the recruiting value. There's the customer value. There's the prospect value. There's the partner value. So
Yeah. Okay.
uh,
That's part of it. Yeah. Yes.
it
And because they're so big, and this is a classic B2B thing, because it takes so long to build mental availability, those that have are in a phenomenal position, right? And so
right.
what is it, the big five sort of accounting firms? We can pretty much predict in 50 years' time, there's still going to be the big five accounting firms. And there's what, a million small accounting firms in the world that would
Yeah.
like to get bigger? But it's really, really hard. They can do the physical availability, open another
Right.
office somewhere. But building mental availability in B2B takes time or
So
amazing creativity.
okay. Uh, and this is the fundamental challenge. This is why there's so much turnover in B2B is that they are not given time. And so there's this, like, if the pipeline isn't full, like this, and sales doesn't have enough coverage, CMO after 18 months, and ironically, the CMO after 18 months is just getting through the whatever the previous CMO did.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
having its impact then, right? So I am trying to
This
figure
is
out,
this is true. This is true in all marketing,
but
right? If if,
so
if, I,
help
if
us
I'm
understand, how do we build? We need 3 years because it's going to take time. There are going to be early signals because it feels like you need to be able to make the case that there are
Yeah,
early signals that we're
yeah,
making progress, right?
yeah. And this is yes, and so this is where you need survey data on the people who aren't buying at the moment, but to show that you are building mental availability with those people. And there, you don't need a lot of metrics. You just need ones that are justifiable. One of the metrics, Ehrenberg-Bass Institute, right, is a B2B. We're a scientific institute, but we're entirely funded by businesses. Right? So we're a B2B brand. And we track things like how many people are talking about us in the media. Right? It's very cheap, right? You just
Uh-huh.
go to Google and tell it to track, mentions the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute. And so it's a very simple metric that tells you that what we're doing is building global fame. Another qualitative measure is, can they say Ehrenberg-Bass? Do they say our name right? Because it's a weird name, right?
Right.
We did some work years ago looking at relationships in B2B, and one of the researchers came up with a really simple metric that you could do if you ask you. So we have a sales rep allocated to you. What's their name? And if they can answer the name instantly, you go, that's a pretty good relationship. Yeah. If they're like, oh, yeah, I've got his business card here somewhere, that's not so good. Yeah, so you can track these things that show that you are building mental availability. And when they come round to being in the buying cycle again, you're going to be hopefully on the list. B2B is just like consumers. They don't buy all the brands. They do not look at all the brands. They go back to a small list. Got to get on that list.
And you got to get on the list. And so one of the things that a lot of the conversations that CMOs have are with CFOs, and they're having to justify any dollar and any spend in any way. And where you see your work show up the most is the brands that are the biggest, that have the most, mental availability, if you will, are the ones that have the best close rate. And by the way, have the strongest pricing power. Those two things, close rate and pricing power. So if you're weak in your market, you're the third, fourth, fifth, your close rate's going to be less. And so it feels like that if you are making progress over time, two of the places that it should show up is pricing power. You're able to hold your prices or raise your prices, and or at least close rate.
Yeah, absolutely. Your physical availability works better when you have mental availability. Uh, I was with one of our sponsors in Sydney just the other day, and yeah, they're a big established brand, particularly in pharmacies and things. they have the ability to launch, extra variants at any time. And they have, they said they've done it so many times, they've launched some new thing. It got, instantly, the sales it's like, boom, it's on shelves and no one sees it.
No
Yeah.
one sees it. And so
Yeah.
what,
So that the return on that physical availability is terrible, right? Because
right.
there's no mental availability. So you can be buying all these search terms and other stuff, but if people don't know what you are, you're not, yeah, then you get a terrible return on it. So increase the mental availability, you get a better return on your physical availability. The two have to overlap.
So let's, speaking of
The
overlapping,
idea that businesses can just do one or the other, or is you have to have both. And well, if you want to grow and if you want to be valuable,
generally,
yeah. But if you don't want to grow, I mean, seriously, yeah, it's perfectly possible that you just, you know, you have some physical availability, you catch some people
right?
when they're falling, and each year you probably get a little bit cheaper or a little bit smaller. You can do that if you want.
So you've highlighted the gap between B2B buyer expectations and sort of brand experiences. In seeing this gap, what do you advise B2B brands to sort of to meet and sort of measure, meet, and exceed these expectations?
Um, so they have to think about the two assets, mental and physical availability, and distinguish. Is it what we're doing now? Is this to catch people who are in the market now? In which case we should evaluate it on sales, right? I mean, we can, as we turn things on and off, we should immediately see a sales response and we should optimize that and we should be doing that. Or is this to build mental availability, which is reaching people who aren't in the marketplace, that means we cannot see it in sales. So if we go and tell the CFO, we're going to spend this money and you're going to see it next month, we are shooting ourselves in the foot, right? Because it's not going to happen and they're going to say we failed. So we've got to we've got to explain that's not going to do that. It is going to drive sales, but the little bit of money we're spending now is going to drive sales over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So you're not going to see it a tiny little effect next month, but but way, way, way into the future. But it's going to make us more valuable. And I won't say the name of the company, but they're a digital platform. They're selling B2B, and they've got themselves in a position where they're just spending entirely on search words and catching, and
Right.
and they are just spiraling, they're just don't buy shares in them, right? And their share price, I mean, it's showing in their share price more than anything, right? So they think if only next quarter, we hit our numbers,
Right.
that'll be great. It's like, but the share market's just like, no, we don't care. Yeah, you managed to cut some costs and make some money next quarter. We don't care. We
Right.
don't think you've got a future. Now, if they spent on some broad reach mental availability, that would be the best thing they could do to support their share price. Because people,
Yeah.
oh
And
yeah, you're
this
affecting people.
gets to,
You're investing. You have a future. Yeah.
right. This expectation, this is CMO managing expectations of short-term, long-term, short-term metrics, long-term metrics, showing progress over time and saying, we are not going to be Apple tomorrow.
No,
We are not going
no,
to get that kind of awareness. We are not going to have people, or we're not going to be Dyson, but we can
not
be,
overnight. But you immediately are showing we're getting more reach than we used to, right?
right.
You show these metrics I talked about before that we are getting to people's heads, and we tell the share market if you're privately listed, where you tell people we're doing this, and that is a fantastic signal to investors that you have a future. So
Right.
that's an immediate effect, right? Okay, our sales didn't go up, but our share price did. That's an immediate
Yeah.
effect. There are lots of companies on US share market who they're not making profits yet, and they've got staggering valuations. Why is that? Because the stock market says this company is building mental and physical availability. It's got a great product. It's got a future.
So do you think there's, I mean, are there some brands out there, B2B brands that you think that you've studied that you think really get it and are doing a great job?
I think the Ehrenberg-Bass Institute's doing a great job.
Well, great.
Well, no,
Congratulations.
okay, yeah, but we do practice what we preach, and here we are, a little weird, well, not so little now, but it was a bunch of weird marketing scientists down in Adelaide, in the southern hemisphere where only 20% of the world's population live, right? I mean, really. And yeah, we're pretty, globally famous. Well, how did we do that? Well, we practiced what we preached and very much. I remember having a revelation ages ago when I thought, we have more PhDs on staff than, Nielsen and Kantar and things. People should know that, why don't people understand that, the brain's power here is just so, and I thought, that's not the issue, Byron. The issue is not your product quality and then telling people we're better. The issue is they don't know about us. Or if they know about us, they think of us once every 2 years or something. Got to build mental availability. So yeah, we get on planes and we talk at big conferences, and we used to track a thing called on-air days, and that was whenever someone spoke at a very big conference or wrote an article in in Ad Age or something like that. And then after time, we didn't need to do that, and we started tracking media mentions because other people were talking about us. Yeah, it's great. But these are all very simple metrics that tell you you're moving in the right direction.
Progress over time.
Yeah.
So,
And you see it, as we say, like, in 5 years' time, the sales are just going to be so much easier. And then 5 years' time, it's going to be easier.
right, because people
It's going
have
to get
heard of
easier.
you, and just like that famous McGraw-Hill ad, if they've heard of
Yeah.
you, it's a lot easier to sell them. And what's so funny is every salesperson who's ever knocked on a door knows that. Like, they know that if their company is someone has heard of them, they go, "You've heard of us? Great. Let's
Yeah.
let me open up my thing and I'll sell you everything I got."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
so
a, it's a it's a buying signal, isn't it? I mean, you see it
yeah,
in like a retail store or something. If the sales rep says, "Oh, we've got such and such coffee machines or something, DeLonghi,"
right,
and people say, "Oh yeah, I've heard of them," that's a buying signal. Is You could say that's just purely descriptive. They're just saying they've heard of you. Nah, it's a positive thing.
right. And if you're a
And the
salesperson in the
inverse,
store, you move them right over there because they're aware of it. It's going to be an
yeah,
easier sell. You've made it by easy. I know what it is. Great.
yep, yep,
Is it in my price range? Let's do this.
yeah. Whereas, well, what are you telling? Why are you bringing me over here to
Right.
look at this thing that I've never heard of before? Uh,
So we gotta we've talked now for 40 minutes and we haven't mentioned AI yet. And it feels
okay.
like this is disrupting everything. At least it feels like it in terms of search has changed. It's changing rapidly. And people aren't clicking to sites, and a lot of websites are getting less organic traffic. I mean, that is happening. Um, it depends on the category and the brand, but it's happening. And because if you go to an LLM, you are, or even Google now, and you see the results, you don't click, and that is changing a lot of how
Yeah, yeah.
brands are
AI
getting discovered.
will certainly change the world, but probably in ways that we don't think about. Um, And there's what's the joke? At the moment, it's a bit like teenage sex. There are a lot of people talking about it, not people, so many people doing it. Um, yeah, look at Will. And so again, you need mental and physical availability. If your business was really just built on search engine optimization, wow, that's fragile, isn't it?
It is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's like saying, I don't know, we're only stocked in surf shops. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
we
I
need
know.
some diversification.
So, I mean, are you seeing any signs of folks actually using generative AI or in a way that you think is going to help them in your mental and physical availability framework?
Um, people have posited, put forward the idea of, maybe in this new world we need to think of, the mental availability is not just about people, but also about the AI, right?
Right.
It's sort of like it has its own mental availability, and so what are we doing that allows us to come up in the same ways? It's like coming up in organic search. It's like how do we make it more likely that the AI is actually going to pick us up or talk about us? Yeah. Yeah. And no,
Yeah.
I think that's a valid thing to be thinking about that. Like, okay, yeah, how do we do that?
Yeah. I mean, we're spending a lot of time in our community talking about it and what people are doing, a lot of experiments. And there feel like there's some things that make sense that sort of equivalent to SEO, but slightly different, like having Q&As on your website, answering every single question that someone might ask you, having pricing information, having competitive information,
Mm.
having clear descriptors, and probably in differentiated descriptors would be helpful too. But and then there's more, like, can you influence the influencers of that actually help pull it, whether it's a Reddit or a YouTube or
Yeah,
where,
yeah, yeah,
those kinds
yeah.
of things. So
Yeah,
it's,
I think people should be at least at first, going to all the big AI and asking them questions about, their category and things and seeing if their company name comes up. Yeah. And if
yeah.
it doesn't, think, why is that?
Well, yeah, you have to do it about 100 times though to be sure that you've to find out the percentage of times that you come up, which is
Yeah,
a whole nother aspect of this.
yeah.
Let's get to sort of, as we push along, you've talked about market-based assets theory.
Yes.
Uh, let's talk a little bit about that,
Okay,
and
good.
maybe we already have, but help us here.
Okay, well, the common way marketing is taught in the sort of four P's world. The four P's is a nice checklist, right? These are four things that affect demand. Uh, but it's taught as more than a checklist. It's more of a theory that these are that almost like you get the best four P, get your four Ps right, and then you sort of inherit the world.
Right.
And there are um, there are actually simulations, competitive simulations that games that university students play and things, pitting themselves against each other and things, and they have this sort of built in. If you can work out from the research or whatever, the absolute right product features, boom, your market share just does this huge leap. The real world is not like that. We notice there's a lot of sluggishness. Like you double your advertising, what happens? Not much. Right?
Yeah.
Lots of sluggishness, and the reason is so much of the work that we do goes through these assets of mental and physical availability, and one of them is very responsive. Half your physical availability, pretty much you half your sales, and the other one is not. Right? I mean, you can't half your mental availability. It's slow to build, but the great thing is it stays around for decades, right? So, but they're very, very different. And so this market-based assets thing is to realize, okay, what makes our company valuable aside from patents and things like that? It's that we built mental and physical availability. Okay. What's the job? We want to keep those assets. We want to enhance those assets. And so it's a big change in thinking from this idea that marketers live in this hopeful fantasy world that if they can just come up with a way to say something in a better way, suddenly people will realize that they're just so good and the sales will just tumble in. No, it's it's like
Not
if we
about
can
a
just
great tagline. What?
yeah, yeah. Or I call it marketing's attitude problem. The way that we will unlock demand is that we just have to fix buyers' attitude. Currently, they see Deloitte's as better. If we just make them think that we're better, oh, we'll get the sale. It's like you do not. That is not. Brands are very rarely rejected. It's they just they didn't even ask you to tender, right? You visited them last week and then they forgot about you the next week. Yeah. And so a realization we've got to make it very easy for people to buy, physical availability, anyone's in the market. And we've got to reach the people out of the market and build some memory structures that give us a chance when they do come into the market. And that is a very big shift in thinking from best four Ps wins. Best product formulation wins. If I just drop the price by a little bit below my competitor, I'll get all their sales. No, you won't. Oh, yeah. The market is not that responsive. It's a slow building of assets. Fortunately, that can be reflected in the value of your company, though, immediately.
Explain how is it? How does it show up in the value of your company?
Your stock price, the value of your company goes up as
Okay,
you
all right,
build mental and physical availability. Boom.
right. So is there
Classic in consumer goods is you announce Walmart is now stocking us. Your share price goes up. You haven't even had any sales yet. It hasn't even
right,
happened, but everyone knows you've got something that's valuable now.
right?
Yeah,
Because they're 25% of all sort of retail sales go through Walmart. So you
yeah,
get in Walmart,
yeah.
that's going to change the nature of your company.
Yeah,
Uh,
we've got, we're a winery and we've got, a list on a massive restaurant chain has suddenly adopted us. Boom, that's worth money. Yeah.
so when you talk about memory structures, it just, it's a wonderful concept, and I just can't think of that many brands that do it well. And so I'm just curious if any brands actually do that, particularly in B2B.
Yeah, in B2B, I think the problem is people get very production, or they get into their jargon and things, and they don't understand. So you're selling, I don't know, a cashier, point of sale or inventory management system, and you get into all this jargon and things, but you're selling to people who, sell burgers and beer, and they love selling burgers and beer, but they don't understand your jargon of your tech stuff. So understanding how to talk to our real customers and fit into their lives. This is true always. This is always a thing in marketing,
Right.
but I think in B2B and in any sort of technical professional services area, as a general rule, if you're talking in acronyms, you've got a problem.
All right. FYI, no acronyms.
Yeah,
Okay. Right.
but a classic. This means that you're in your little bubble. You can talk to your competitors, you can talk to your colleagues, but your customers probably go, what is that? I don't know.
Well, sadly, we're nearing the end of our conversation, and I'm going to give you a final challenge. You are
Okay.
suddenly the CMO of $100 million cybersecurity firm. Congratulations. What are two things you're definitely going to do and one thing you're going to try to avoid?
Immediately, I'm going to try to find out like where my sales come from. Yeah. And sorry, what's the one thing I'm
Two
gonna
things that you're going to do immediately, and then one thing you're
find
going to
out
try to
sales come
avoid.
from? Yeah, find out sort of like my market share and things like that just like where I sit in the market. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get a map of my sort of mental and physical availability. Where is the upside? Because the easiest way to grow sales is to go into a new region. Get on your horse and go west. Um, and what am I going to avoid? Oh well, a million things of like
Well, you can list them off. You don't have
oh
to.
yeah, well, a classic is spending too much on existing customers. People
Right. Yes.
people
And
do that all
it's
the
so
time.
funny you talk about that. So if you're spending too much on existing customers, because that's where the dollars, like say all your existing customers go to this one trade show and you spend gazillion
Mm.
against them, you're not going to grow your market is basically the way you're thinking about it. And I
Yeah,
think a lot of folks think about it differently, which is I'm spending on my existing customers because I want to upsell and cross sell them
yeah,
another $1 million worth of contracts.
yeah. But the returns from cross-selling and upselling are way less than people imagine. Right? Way less. So, and that tends to happen anyway, right? So you go, oh, well, if it tends to happen anyway, then I just want more customers, right? And as they get to know us and have different needs and things, they will start to buy more from us over time. But if I don't have many customers, I can cross-selling and upselling is not going to go very far, is it?
So it's just amazing. I mean, I can see why every VC and PE firm would want to have you in there because that's all they want is more customers. That's
Yeah, that's
it.
what I say.
That's it.
Private equity do tend to get it because they're less concerned about usually, like making money next quarter. They want to make the company more valuable next quarter. And there's no way a smaller customer base magically gets more valuable.
No, it's that combination of growth and EBITDA and a magic number that they get to. Okay. Well, we are at the end of the time now, and I really want to thank you for joining us and sharing your insights. I know you've given folks a
Pleasure. Yeah.
lot of food for thought.
Good. And you can go and have your dinner now.
Yes, exactly. And we're grateful for your leadership in challenging the convention because there is so much. So keep that data coming and those insights coming. We need more. It's a challenging moment for marketers.
Yeah, there's so much we don't know, but that's great. It's fun to be a scientist. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us.